Hey, what's up? Cedric and SIDRA here. So, it's another installment of our discussion, and we're talking about what's some insidious stuff, some
Yeah.
insidious things, and it dealt with the past. Now, this is going to be in for a long haul, so I expect for those that want to listen for the 15-second clip, nope. The 44-second clip, nope. This deals with you, and this deals with any and everyone around you. And it started off with me bringing up the fact that in my videos in the past, I had spoken of how these politicians can reinstitute slavery. And a lot of people might feel, well, impossible, man. The Constitution, laws, amendments, and all that. But what you don't get is all of that means nothing. And the reason it means nothing is because all it takes is what they call language. They could reinstitute slavery by just simply saying, hey, it's all right so long as it's under this criteria, because it will circumvent and subjugate all other rulings. It's all right for prison. It's just not all right for general public. And at the time for prison, primarily minorities were going there. That's why it was all right. And it hasn't really changed. So we're talking about Roe v. Wade, how that was a severe and strong guideline. Because if abortion was illegal, then when that ruling came out, what you would hear is, under this specific situation, is abortion allowed or legal or just. That's what it would be. But until then, abortion was just a social thing. It was, what's your religion? What's your morality level? So, no abortions because God, or abortions because I don't want someone's, sexual assault child. I don't want this child because it's going to kill me if I go any further. I didn't want this child because I'm not ready for it, and I certainly didn't want the situation that happened to happen. Or I thought one thing, but the person's not going to be there for me. I can't have this kid. When the person says, yeah, I want to be with you. Oh, you're pregnant? Who knows who it could be, and then leave. There's so many situations.
Mm-hmm.
But all they have to do is just say, hey, under this circumstance, because of this language, certain things can be the way we want it. And it doesn't matter about, and what you was going to get into, CJ, was how insidious it was. It all went back to Trump. And I was saying it went way before that, because they was working on Roe Wade since Roe Wade.
Yeah.
And it's a religious thing for there to be zero abortions, to be extremely fruitful and whatnot. You was going on maybe that or something else. And this is just a discussion. So the topic can go pretty much anywhere Cedra wants it to go right now, because he's the one that's flagshipping it. But I just want to get a preface going.
So Trump gets into office, and as I said earlier, we were talking, as much as I detest it, a lot of this, all roads lead back to Trump. Now, you're right. They were working on it since, Roe v. Wade was a thing. But working on it, wanting and wishing, is a lot different than the pieces falling into place. And there have been many Republican presidents, we haven't had many, but there have been Republican presidents since Roe v. Wade became a thing. But Trump was a very specific kind of Republican president. He's good with people. He's good with reading a room. On the flip side of that, he's like a functional idiot who doesn't read, doesn't do research, is extremely greedy, and will listen to the last person in the room. And with him running as a Republican and winning, that put him in a very very good position for those people who've been out there maneuvering, wanting, and wishing all this time about Roe v. Wade and other things. So as soon as he became president, and I remember this, as soon as he became president, a lot of different people, political arena, media, and I guess they weren't, I was listening, but they weren't listened to, were saying that this could be detrimental for Roe v. Wade. And they were like, because there are people on the Supreme Court at the time who are up there in years and may not be up there much longer. So if they step down or pass away while Trump is in office, then he has the ability to appoint basically Republican-leaning Supreme Court justice, although they're supposed to be impartial because, justice. But yeah, they were saying he's got the ability to appoint conservative-leaning justices. And if that happens, a whole bunch of ifs. If that happens, then there are going to be entities in these states, especially these southern states or those conservative square states, who are going to start putting forth lawsuits, court cases. They're going to start passing laws to infringe on abortion rights. They're going to start doing it on purpose, these state legislatures. And when that happens, people have to sue. Private citizens sue, the ACLU sues because it's unconstitutional. Okay, they sue. A determination is made, it's appealed higher. A determination is made, it's appealed higher. A determination is made, it's appealed higher. And lo and behold, it goes before this, at the time, ethereal, conservative-leaning Supreme Court, and then gets struck down. All of this was ifs. But when Trump became president, for a lot of people, those ifs were laid out very clearly. But people weren't listening. So, very quietly, while Trump was being president, saying dumb shit, being a debacle on the state level, behind the scenes, those ifs were occurring, one after another. You lost 2 justices. He replaced them. States passed laws that would be BS and unconstitutional. They got sued. They got decided upon. They got appealed. And everything slowly happened. It's just nobody was paying attention until they got to the Supreme Court. And a lot of folks was like, oh, okay, they're going to strike it down there.
Because it's the Supreme Court, the very Supreme Court that issued that thing.
No, the Supreme Court is not a monolith. It changes based on who is there.
Yep.
And so, Roe v. Wade was struck down. We're going to leave it to the states. Well, that's bull. We know what's going to happen there. Okay. Now, then it starts to come out, hey, we had all this time and Roe v. Wade wasn't codified. And a lot of us were like, what is codified? Codified is when the Congress makes it into a law.
They had, 40-some years to do it?
And it was not important. They were too busy bickering about, my state wants this, you suck, yada, yada. And I remember after Roe v. Wade was struck down, and the thing about it not being codified was brought to light, that got me thinking, there are a lot of things that were decreed because of a Supreme Court decision.
That was not codified.
That were not codified. And all that has to happen is all of the ifs have to fall in line for it to be struck down. And the first one that I talked about was Brown versus the Board of Education. In case y'all don't know, Brown versus the Board of Education was the court case that struck down the determination that separate but equal between blacks and whites in this country was unconstitutional. Now, the separate but equal that this country functioned under, where Jim Crow was basically born under, That was created by the Supreme Court back in the, it should be late 1800s, maybe early 1900s. The Supreme Court did that, basically making it legal for black people to get tremendously discriminated against for another 50, 60 years until the civil rights movement, which had been going on for far longer than anyone knows, actually became a well-known thing. It took years for the court case that led to the striking down of separate but equal to get to the Supreme Court. They were working on it for 10, 15 years. It wasn't like they just showed up one day and said, hey, we don't like this, Supreme Court said it's dead. No, that stuff takes a long time. It takes work. It takes evidence. It takes a long time. But
And it shouldn't.
there are people who are working in the periphery, using the laws that are there to prevent discrimination against those considered quote unquote, and I say this strongly, minorities, using those exact same laws to undo what was done in the name of equality. That is how affirmative action, that case got to the Supreme Court and was deemed, hey, you can't use that anymore. And nobody really knows what affirmative action is. And it would take me another whole video to break out my notes and lay out for you exactly what it is, and not the BS that you hear from the evangelical, conservative, racist pundits, think tanks, and politicians.
Affirmative action was simply put as it makes it so that you can't discriminate someone in a job or any place like that based on race. And so you have to have someone, a person of color. In other words, your business cannot be 100% white people. Simple as that. It cannot be 100% white people. So every business found a grunt level to make or some side thing to make, and then they hired a black person to do it, where they did stuff, but there was not much power behind it. And then slowly, since there were people of color in those companies, they started hiring other people, especially when it became competitive. Because others said, we hired these few black people and now we're doing more business. It's all about the money. It's a capitalist regime. It's a capitalist kingdom. So basically, they made money off of minorities. Other companies said, well, how can we do that too? And since Trump got in, he's like, they're like, it's it should just be white people. And so they made sure to kind of do away with it.
But this is how they did it. It was a conservative think tank run by some conservative lawyer who went out and found disgruntled Asian people, Asian Americans, who thought that they didn't get into the institution of their choice because of affirmative action.
Yeah, you're hiring these people, but you're not hiring us, because affirmative action wasn't about them. It was basically about white and black, which is what this country tries to be. But if you really look at it, it's basically, the way I see it, it should be about people in general.
But it's not.
It's not, because, a group of people, the outer city people, don't want it to just be about people in general. So, and this case didn't have anything to do with hiring. It was about higher education, about admissions at two prestigious universities. And so they argued it, appealed it, got it to the conservative Supreme Court, and they said that it was unconstitutional for these universities and admissions to use affirmative action. But here's the thing. This case was brought on the backs of Asian Americans. But at both of these universities, when it comes to the minorities that are admitted,
Asian Americans are admitted more over African Americans, over Native Americans, over Latino Americans. So Asian Americans argued to the Supreme Court that they were discriminated against, and that's why they didn't get to their universities, at universities that predominantly accepts them more over other minority demographics. You see how weird that is? But it didn't matter because it was a means to an end, and the means to an end was not supposedly giving these Asian Americans any kind of justice. The means to an end was to bring down affirmative action, which they have been quietly trying to do since its inception. So there's another example of how insidious it is, but if you get all of your ifs to suddenly come true, then it can happen. There are lots of things that have not been codified into law, which circles back to why SEDRIK says slavery could be brought back. And it doesn't have anything to do with what the legislative branch or the executive branch has to do. It's just that someone has to be creative enough to use the laws in place to do it. And those are two prime examples that I have given of when that has happened. It's the politicians, they have the ability to make it so that it can't be undone, but they're too busy bickering among themselves and working, 30 days a year or whatever, of a small amount of bull it is, and accomplishing nothing to actually accomplish something that would help us.
And that's the problem. Politicians don't help us. They help themselves, the elitist class, and that's about it.
I remember my train of thought. There was a court case. Someone sued a private company. The private company, which essentially, if it's a private company, you can do what they want. This private company decided to create a program that would help black women get into the venture capital business, because that's an industry where black women aren't frequent. They're not able to get a foothold, and so they're making a program that is explicitly helping that demographic to get into an industry that they normally have been shut out of. And they got sued because they said it's discriminating against white people. Well, there are white people in that industry who have dominated it for years. But you're mad because you aren't able to be included in this program, when the whole reason why programs like this have to be created is because on the whole, industries dominated by the quote unquote majority won't let anybody else come and play in their playground. They won't let anybody else join in the reindeer games. So programs like this have to be created. They didn't want black people going to school back in the late 1800s before the end of Reconstruction. So the government, the United States government, started creating HBCUs, historically black universities and colleges, so that black people could become educated. And now there are white people out there who are like, oh, HBCUs are discriminatory, and want to shut them down. But a lot of those people who have been educated, people who have gone on to do incredible things in this country and for this country, who were educated in HBCUs, would not have been educated if they didn't exist. See how backwards all of that is? But now they are beginning to use the law that black people have had to use to be able to gain a foothold in this country, to roll all that back, because they say they are being discriminated when everything is always in their favor. And it's incredibly insidious, incredibly quiet, and no one, not many ones, even see it or are paying attention.
But once it happens, then you start complaining. Then you're up in arms, and then the government and those who are at fault for doing this stuff, all they have to do is shut up, say nothing, do nothing, and they know that you, the people, will follow suit. Because you run out of gas, you run out of steam. There's no one telling you how to get anything done. It's just everyone telling you how you got messed over and who helped mess you over. And that's it. No solutions. Just they let you know the train is coming. They let you know that you're getting hit by the train and how your body's getting spread all over the place. But they're not going to tell you that you could have just jumped to the other track. They're not going to tell you that you could have just moved out the way. You could have switched, the lanes. There's so many things you can do, but they won't tell you that. And that puzzles me. Maybe these online people are just viewer grifters or something, If we give them solutions, and the solutions happen, then we'll lose viewers because we won't have anything to complain about because everyone would have solved it.
There's always something to complain about.
Yeah.
That's one of the natures of being alive. There's going to be something. No matter how big or minuscule.
There's so many things that could easily be solved. Easily, quickly. Not necessarily immediately, but within not your lifetime, but I mean like in months. Maybe 2 years. But that's not what people want. And it's almost like people just want to be able to wake up and complain about something while telling everyone don't complain. It's just... it's weird. I don't know if it's because people are weird, lazy, stupid, or they just don't know and don't know what to do. And you got these white, racist Republicans who have no problem telling you who to hate and how to hate them. And you got those that listen to them without questioning or the ability to question. Because I'm going to tell you right now, when someone is talking to me and they try to get me to hate a group of people, I get turned off. I can't even, as much as I want to, I can't even hate the racist, bigoted, xenophobic Republicans. I just don't have that level of energy. I just don't have that level of care to hate them. I view things differently on how to handle them. And that's not how this country will ever function. But I do hope that in listening to everything SIDRA had to say, the little bit that I have to say, that it makes you wonder what you can do and how you can do it. Because everything is solvable. And if there's a problem and you don't know it's there, all you have to do is listen to the complaints. Validate them. See how worthy they are. Are these complaints going to harm someone if you solve them? Or will they help someone if you solve them? Think about that. Be critical. Be fair, be honest, be just. And maybe that'll help get to a better day. We got one life, right? Let's not worry about our children's future. Let's worry about our immediate tomorrow. Because when we solve our tomorrows, then by default, our children would have a better tomorrow. Thank you for listening.